Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the IRMS Public Sector Group event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Elizabeth Barber and I chair IRMS Public Sector. And in a very few minutes, I'm going to hand over to our speaker, Scott Sammons, who is going to take us through the next hour about AI and the impact that it's having as we're moving forward. I would like to say, if you've got any questions, if you pop them in the chat. Scott, I don't know, can you see the chat? Are you going to you'll field the questions as you go through? Okay, and if you obviously feel free to ask questions of your fellow delegates. All we ask is that we keep everything constructive and positive, please. The recording will be available after the event, but not immediately, as we have to ask our volunteer digital team to prepare that for upload to the YouTube channel, and any presentation notes, etc., will be uploaded to the IRMS website, and we will send the link round. So without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Scott to take us through the next hour. So over to you, Scott.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. This is I was saying to Elizabeth, this is my first Teams webinar that I've ever done, ever. So you're taking my Teams webinar virginity, if there is such a thing. So if this is a little bit clunky, because I've never played around with the features before, then that's why. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session on AI, ML, RM, IG, any other acronym that we could come up with. What's going on? Where are we? Because everyone's talking about it. We've had a change of government. We've had the fun, exciting issues around Microsoft over the last couple of days. We've had all sorts of things going on. Therefore, where are we right now? What's the state of play? What do I need to be worried about? Do I need to be worried about anything at all? This is what we're going to go through over the next hour. So as I said before, my name's Scott Sammons. I'm wearing my Act Now training hat today. So for those of you that don't know, Act Now Training is a training provider of all things IG, from data protection, FOI, records management, all of the above, plus a lot more. And we've won the IRMS Supplier of the Year award for 3 years, not necessarily in a row because we missed one, but certainly for 2024. So what I want to take you through over the next hour is, well, first thing to tell you is all of the images that I'm going to use today, or the majority of them, have been created by AI. Because I want you to see how AI works, some of the standard issues around it, and some of the things you can look for that still go on, and some of the issues that crop up. So, for example, at the moment, a lot of the AI tools that you get really struggle with words. So like in this situation, I asked AI to generate for me an image that shows a robot holding a picture or a sign that says, "This is the program." And it couldn't quite spell program. So it's kind of spelt it as that. So not quite as, what's the word I'm looking for? Completion or completely replacing human beings as people will sell it to you as. So what we're going to go through is some of the current tools that are out there. So there's a few things for you to be aware of, and a few things that have caught me out as a, oh, okay, thanks for turning that on, Microsoft, and not telling me. That's helpful. So we're going to go through some of those and some areas where things have been turned on or companies have started to announce they're turning on AI, and what that means and what therefore we should be doing about some of that. Because some of that is maybe not a problem. Some of that is potentially a bit of a, oh God, my time is now running out. I thought I had time to think about it. Now I don't. So we're going to go through some of that. We're therefore going to go through some of the common issues are that crop up with AI. Status of UK legislation, what the UK is doing about it, especially now that we've got a new government, and some things that we recommend that you as information professionals can do, including there are some book recommendations that I've got for you, only some, because the rest of them we hang on to our AI basics course. I don't give away all my magic in one sitting, but certainly some that we would definitely recommend that would really help you out as an information professional. So we'll go through some of that. So very quickly, for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Scott Sammons. I have apparently, so I'm told, biological intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. I've been doing IG for about 15 plus years now, 5 of which have been with Out and Out training. I do training consultancy. I'm also a skills coach for the IG apprenticeships program, and I volunteer for the IRMS. So, first thing to start with, and this is something that we recommend that everyone starts with, is actually answering the question and getting to the bottom of what is AI and what is not. Or rather, as I like to put it, what is artificial intelligence and what is a very clever algorithm? Because you can get a very clever algorithm that has a lot of problems or presents a lot of issues for you, but is it genuinely artificial intelligence? That's questionable. So, little question for you, and I want to know what you think. This is very much point of view. There's no right or wrong answer here, because even laws, governments, various other different places are arguing about what is genuinely artificial intelligence. So I want to know what you think. In the chat, what do you think? See, Michael knows where I'm going with this. What is artificial intelligence? If you were to explain it to a baby, a child, or an alien, assuming aliens don't have their own version of AI, obviously, how would you define it? What is AI? If you're going to be on the lookout for it, if you've all come here today to find out more about it, what is it? How would you describe it in your head? And again, no right or wrong answers. I want to know what you think, because each and every member of your staff is going to have their own view as to what it is and what it isn't. IT are going to have their own view around what it is and what it isn't. So what is it to you? So Claire says something that creates new content. Machine learning. I create, oh, to the point there, something that creates new content. I create new content. Am I artificial intelligence? A calculator creates new content. Is that artificial intelligence? Something that's not human, created by machine, coded with maths, man-made algorithms, machine learning, which also compares back to human activity. Whatever whatever the next big algorithm development is. I like that. I might actually frame that one and put that one up on my wall. I like that. A collective term for technology that automates based on learning and being trained to do something. Technology that can learn and make decisions without human input. Ooh. Oh, I should have got a QI little alert thing come up actually. Oh, I like that, Claire. I might add that one into a future session. I like that. Something capable of learning information beyond its boundaries. Something thinking for itself in a style of human thinking, which comes from something from the 2010s. It's AGI, not AI. Ooh, ooh. Technology that can tackle problems and solve them with results that are somewhat similar to those that human would produce. Computer that can solve problems like a human being. Actions carried out by machines that show aspects of human intelligence. Yes, 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 yes. I like all of those. If you then apply them to what is being badged as AI, you'll find that there's a lot of systems, a lot of tools that are being badged as AI when they're not. They're just a clever algorithm. Because if you think back to your calculator, does it require intelligence to add up? Some could argue yes, some could argue no. But think back to your calculator you had at school, if you had a calculator at school, or a calculator you've got on your desk. Would you say that is artificial intelligence? Because it adds up. It does something that would normally require human intelligence. It's something that's generating content of some form. But is it AI? And this is the crux of, this is what, having looked at this for a little while now, because I got involved in a project long before some of the resources were available. So I learned the hard way as to what some of this noise around AI was, because a client came to me saying they want to do X, and I went, I've got no idea what you're talking about. So suddenly you've got to learn, mainly through studying books rather than by anything else. But is something more accurate than what a human might produce. I can agree with that. As someone that is terrible doing math calculations in my head, yeah, I'd agree with that. There are lots of things out there that will badge themselves as AI when they're not. They are clever algorithms, like a calculator. They do certain things that are following a certain pathway. But is it, to the comment there, is it making a decision? No. And this is one of the things that we as information professionals need to get a grip of, like we do with all other things. So this is why AI is no different to any other challenge you've ever faced, especially when it's around new technologies, new processes, is what's actually happening, what's actually going on, what is that AI actually doing, what's the algorithm behind it actually doing? Because there's lots of examples where clever algorithms, artificial intelligence, whatever word we want to use, is being used for good things. There was a case in Cambridge Hospital late last year where they announced they'd been using AI to assist in the treatment of liver cancer. One of my friends has recently, well, not recently, it was a couple of years ago now, but they had their prostate removed, and that was used using modern 4D modeling that's AI and robotic assisted. Very, very clever, very, very advanced, very, very efficient. So rather than having I think something like a 53% risk of nerve damage if you have it traditionally done, now there's less than a 5% risk of nerve damage. Brilliant advances, very clever, very useful. There's been a few case studies where people have announced they're using it to assist with things like town planning, resource management, product and system design, cybersecurity monitoring, all sorts. There are loads of good examples of whether it's a very clever algorithm or whether it's AI, some very clever examples where it has just moved things along to make things better for society. And that's definitely true. AI can definitely be a thing, a positive thing. It can also be a negative thing. So one of the issues, or several of the issues that have started to appear because of AI, is so late last year there was a news story where the Children's Commissioner had done a study with several charities looking into the ability for people to create certain content. And I tried it out. So I borrowed a friend's computer. Well, I borrowed one of my old ones. Not on a corporate network, just a totally random computer, typed in or said to one of these AI content generators, create content for me that is two people in a loving embrace. And the content that I got back was not quite over 18, but it certainly was PG. So if I was to be a little bit more explicit in what I'm asking for, yes, you could very easily create that sort of content without certain roles being put in place. A cybersecurity company that I do a lot of work with, they even showed me, they did some work with ChatGPT, and they were very easily able to edit the code so that a lot of the security or morality restrictions were removed, and it would then do pretty much anything you asked of it, including giving you details about how to make a bomb. So there's lots of, like with most bits of technology, there's lots of pros, there's lots of cons. There's lots of opportunities if we get this right for it to be a good thing. There's also lots of opportunities for it to be gotten wrong. One of the key things for us as information professionals, and this is something I keep banging on about, is we need to stop framing this as a data protection problem. Because yes, data protection is a big part of this. Yes, I completely agree with that. But it's not the only one. There's loads of others, like the point there, copyright infringement. There's loads of other scenarios whereby someone could use an AI or develop an algorithm or an AI bit of technology that goes nowhere near personal data, yet does it have a fundamental effect on what you do and how you do it, and potentially your customers, patients, whatever? Yes, definitely. But has it used personal data? No. Is it processing personal data? No. Therefore, is your DPIAs, your other governance controls going to pick it up in any way? No. So one of the things that we see a lot of, and this we've been doing the AI course with that now for the last 2 years, is a lot of people are still framing their controls around doing a DPIA on it. Personal data, personal data, personal data. Actually, there's quite a lot of tools out there that are using AI that go nowhere near personal data, and they're still going to have a direct threat to you, to what you're doing, the services that you provide. So one of the things we definitely say to people is, look, change your governance controls, change your questions in things like project management, etc., to ask them if they're doing things around algorithms. Look at this from an algorithmic point of view, because as we've talked about here, and as various governments keep saying, as various trade bodies keep saying, artificial intelligence is a very small thing. A very clever algorithm, a very complex algorithm, which is what most of these tools are based upon, actually is the more popular thing and is the more common thing. And it's that you actually want to focus a lot of your time on, because a lot of the tools that are going to come across your desk aren't actually genuine artificial intelligence. HAL from Space Odyssey, the computer from Star Trek, all that other stuff. We're not quite anywhere near that. Therefore, practically, whether it's public sector, private sector, it doesn't really matter. You probably want to focus your controls on algorithms. What is that algorithm doing? How has it been developed? What data is it using? And we're already starting to see things like Adobe, Slack, Microsoft, Grammarly, blah, 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 all these sorts of things starting to turn on their AIs or their assistants. And a lot of their little AI things are basically putting your data through algorithms, either to learn from it. So, for example, Slack announced that it wanted to use a lot of your data in your messages, in your storage areas, etc., in order to learn from it, so that it can build its algorithm to assist you in how you work. I had exactly the same problem. Talking of CCTV systems, I had a client that was just looking to upgrade their CCTV, didn't want facial recognition, didn't want any of that. They just wanted a bog standard CCTV system. But because they were being forced to upgrade the software by default had facial recognition turned on. If we hadn't asked questions about it, that would have just been deployed and no one would have known, because it was just crept in through the back door. So one of the things that we definitely recommend that has started to happen, and certainly something that we're starting to see more of, is AI in disguise, or algorithms in disguise, hence Transformers. Oh yeah, I had to creep a bad joke in there somewhere. There are so many different things that are being badged as mere software upgrades, where they're not. They're actually creeping in some algorithmic development or some algorithmic tools that are starting to suck in your data, whether it's an isolated thing and it's just kept to your network, like Microsoft Copilot is meant to be, or whether it's something where it adds to the mastermind, if we can call it that, overall, doesn't matter. It's still secondary processing of any of your data, not just your personal data. So from a copyright point of view, you've got problems of them using your data for the development of their product, not yours. And from a personal data point of view, you've got an issue with them using their data or your personal data for their purposes, not yours. So this is why we need to stop framing this as a data protection issue. alone. It's a much bigger issue than that, especially for us as information professionals. There's going to be data sets, there's going to be various bits of data that are used, swallowed up, absorbed by the algorithm that go nowhere near personal data. So I don't quite know how to frame this, or we almost need to give up the obsession with it. GDPR is the big thing that gets shouted about the loudest. Even the UK government said we're going to bring in some AI rules, the old government, not the new one, by fiddling with data protection law. Yeah, but that's not regulating AI, that's regulating personal data in AI. So that's a subset of a big problem. It just seemed like fiddling with a little bit over here rather than actually dealing with the problem itself. Whereas at least the EU law doesn't limit itself to the use of personal data in AI. It talks about all uses of AI. And that's what we should be doing as IG professionals. We should be looking at the data protection stuff, yes, but your controls, your framework should be looking at all of it. All uses of data, whether it's licensed stuff, reuse of public sector information stuff, whether it's personal data, whether it's research data sets, whatever you do, and all of you are different, use of data for things like algorithmic development, AI, etc., should come under our banner, domain, dominion, whatever word you want to use, so that we can pull together a joined up approach. And I'll talk more about that a little bit more. So fundamentally, what is AI? Well, to your point, there isn't actually a definition of it. One of the things that got pointed out, or one of the big criticisms of the AI Act, and one of the big criticisms potentially of the UK Act and other acts around the world, is that a lot of them are failing to define what it actually is. They're talking about the controls of what you should place on it, and some of them will give you a loosely worded definition, but it is different depending on which country you talk to. But pinning down an exact definition of it is proving to be a little bit more difficult than what you would think. And one of the reasons why I bring it up is two things. One, for academic geeky reasons, because you know me, I love a good academic geeky discussion. And you could talk about this till you're blue in the face. We could debate what is and what is not AI for the rest of the day into tomorrow and the weekend and beyond. But when you are then ask employees to that point just there, they will all have a different view on what it is as well. And some of them will think what they've got is not AI, therefore they don't need to come anywhere near you. Some of them won't even know that it is AI, that it's just a product, when actually it's doing some pretty complex, nasty stuff in the background. So one of the things we recommend you do, and this probably is a little bit different to all other types of technology tools that we've deployed in the past, is you're going to have to do a bit of an education piece on this. Actually making all staff of all levels aware of what actually it is and where it might likely to be, where it is likely to crop up. That way then, if they start buying in a system that they think is perfectly innocent, because as far as they're aware, there's nothing going on, because they don't know to be on the lookout for these things, they can genuinely ask and know why we're inquiring about it and why it's a concern. Whereas in the past, where we've just deployed a system or a storage system or whatever, yeah, we wanted to know about it, and yeah, it could be a problem, but it didn't quite affect all staff, whereas this can and often does very much affect everyone. Therefore, you want everyone to be trained on it. I asked AI to generate an image of me of a robot saying, "What am I?" And it did that. It's holding a sign that says, "Am I?" which isn't quite what I asked it, but never mind. It's a cute little picture of a robot saying, "Am I?" Are you what? Who knows? So, step one, train your staff. Train yourself. Do a lot of research on it. Find out a common definition for yourself and for your organization, what is AI and what isn't. Because there are lots of things that under the umbrella of it, they're going to present different problems to you. So what do you want to do? What do you want to focus on? What are the areas that are most likely going to come up for you? So, for example, GPs practices, as an example, it's distinctly likely that as a GP's receptionist, as a GP secretary, practice administrator or practice manager, whatever else, you are going to use software, as we saw when the Dragon software came out way back when. You're going to use software that makes it easy to dictate notes, to transfer verbal to written and back again, and perhaps even compile letters from various sources. That's an obvious area where that's likely to come up. And if you were to ask an admin assistant or a GP's receptionist if they had what they would do that, or do they want something that would do that, they would immediately go yes and probably bite your hand off. So straight away, I need to know more about how this works because it's coming. Your staff are going to go looking for it. You are going to get salespeople trying to flog it to you. So straight away, what should I do? What am I concerned about? And did any of you that have been around, I want to say this politely, because I've been around 15 years. For those of you that have been around for a while, do you remember when Dragon, for example, came away from or started offering, rather than just the handheld recorders that was on tape, they started doing the digital ones and had a digital service that would part translate some of what was spoken into the dictation device into text. Do you remember when that was, a few of you get involved in that project when that was around? Because if you did, this isn't that far away from, that was translation software that would listen into what the person was dictating and translate it into a digital version, be that a digital recording or a digital translation where it would then put it into a Word document and the member of staff then had to double check it. I remember looking at those projects back in 2010, this would have been. I think we deployed it for social workers. It's been around for a while. It's not new, not by a long way. So if you have already looked at some of those things and looked at some of these bits of software, you're right, Michael, it wasn't very good at all. But it was interesting to see how it worked and how it learnt. It was fascinating. So if you've been involved in those sorts of projects before, you can reuse some of that knowledge for this. You know that it's there. So there's various other things that come under the banner of artificial intelligence as well. So speech, planning and optimization system. So you give it a data set and it will reorganize it into something that's useful. So for example, like staff planning, rota planning, resource management, that sort of thing. Robotics, vision, creation of a 4D, 3D environment, language processing. That's where you get a lot of the language model stuff from, that sort of language processing stuff. This stuff, analyzing data sets. And again, there's an app on your phone that will do it, that will translate it. There's loads of different ways of doing it, but almost all of it, not all of it, but almost all of it is based on this algorithmic machine learning or algorithms, full stop. So if you can therefore get your head around algorithms and how they work, if this then that, A plus B equals C, think back to your algebra lessons when you were at school, that sort of thing. If you can get your head around that, yeah, it does, then you're in a, you will understand how algorithms work and you'll understand how AI works. So genuine AI, genuine artificial intelligence, is pretty much this bit, machine learning. Specifically, where if we build a model, so we take some data, for example, so the example we use on the Act Now course is we take some data on what constitutes a letter. So if you think about the individual data fields of a letter, building a program to be able to recognize a letter. So if you think to Mr. Clippy, what he used to do, that's why I keep using him as an example, because he was a very early example of an algorithm going, oh, that looks like a letter. Would you like me to change the format in order for it to do X? It was very much an if this, then that. So if you've typed in to whom it may concern, you get this sort of response, a very primitive early version of AI. That's obviously grown and evolved over time because the training data has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Now we know more and more and more about what constitutes letters. Therefore, the algorithmic bit has seen more and more and more, has changed over time, either because we've changed it, so it's been structured, supervised machine learning, or over time, it's changed and edited itself, which is what's known as the unsupervised machine learning. And it's this stuff that's genuine intelligence. Because if you think about a calculator, it doesn't learn. It's literally been pre-programmed with all the different types of calculations, so it can only do what it's programmed to do. That's it. It can't grow, evolve, it can't remember, nothing. Therefore, it's not intelligent. It literally does that plus that. Otherwise, when they introduced robotics into car manufacturing back in the 90s, they would all be artificial intelligence, and we've had slave labor for what, 20 odd years. No, it's pre-programmed. It only does certain. That's it. It's no more complex or no more clever than Microsoft Word is. Simple. A plus B equals C. We control it. We manipulate it. It's supervised learning. Whereas if it's this bit, unsupervised, the algorithm changes weight. So the more it sees, the more data it gets hold of, the more it then triggers or edits the algorithm, because it goes, hang on a minute, that ain't right. Or now there's something associated with that. I now know that plus that also plus that equals that. I now get a more evolved model. That's what we do as human beings. This is as close to human-related intelligence as you're ever going to get. But that stuff is rare. A lot of what you're buying in your various products will be this bit, supervised learning. We control the algorithm. We control how it works. We've set the parameters. It's not really artificial intelligence. It's artificial, yes. It's clever, yes. It's complicated, yes. But is it thinking and remembering for itself? No. It's very much, we've told it to do X, it's doing X. Even if X is the most complex thing on the planet, doesn't matter. It's not remembering anything, it's not growing, it's not evolving, it's just doing. So if you think of AI as 3 different types or 3 different things, if you like, this is technically just a complex algorithm where we control it, we manipulate it, we edit it, we're in control. It doesn't really do grow or evolve, whereas this stuff, it can do. Unsupervised learning, where we just set the algorithm off, it learns, it remembers, but for a short period of time. So the moment it's done the thing it was meant to do, that's it. It then drops it, doesn't remember it, that's gone. Or it's this stuff, where it's genuinely remembering. So ChatGPT, for example, would come under this definition because it's genuinely remembering. It's taking what this person asked and the answer that it found and adding that to the next question. So if, for example, person 1 asks one question, person 2 asks a similar question, it'll remember what it said for both in order to better answer the question for the third person. That's why IBM or the engineer at IBM landed themselves in trouble, because their code that they used to answer one question was reused for something else. Spotting the difference to the question that's in the chat means you've got to understand the process. You've got to ask questions around the algorithm. What is it actually doing? Is it literally here it is, this is how it works, it doesn't change at all, and your software provider has complete control over it? You know that that is going to be something known as supervised learning. It's a structured, controlled algorithm, machine learning algorithm. Whereas if they say to you, actually, it changes over time, correct, to the point there is a distinction between AI and sophisticated algorithms. If the algorithm changes over time, remembers over time, is able to edit itself and change its parameters over time, that is as close to artificial intelligence as we can currently get. But they do, to the point also there, both of them present some very similar problems. But it's this overuse of the word AI that makes you think that you've got something that is presenting more of a problem, because what the algorithm to remember and grow presents some different problems to the one that doesn't. Lots of similar problems, but some slightly different ones. Means that those issues, most of us aren't going to go anywhere near, unless you've got something like ChatGPT. So if someone does want to say they want to use the public version of ChatGPT on your data set, you know you've got a problem with reuse, and you know that that data is going to then go and sit in the algorithm's memory banks to be used for other things. Whereas if it's just an in-house algorithm of a bit of software that's isolated to you, that is, yes, it might be using or applying it on your data, but it's limited to you, that's a different problem. Same set of concerns, but not quite, in my opinion at least, not quite as bad as the other. But we are talking shades of grey here, or shades of bad here, or shades of problematic here is probably the better way of putting it. So some of the consistent challenges that crop up across both clever algorithms versus actually genuine AI include things like, as been mentioned in the chat there, data quality, data bias. And remember, data bias isn't just the, oh, this has got racial profiling to it or gender discrimination or whatever it might be. Bias in data is made up of lots of different things. And some of that could be nasty stuff. Some of that could actually just be, that's just the way the data was built legitimately. There's no inherent nastiness to it or anything like that. It's just got limitations. So when you're looking at data bias, don't just look at, am I looking for the risk, the potential for prejudice? Actually look at where the data came from, its limitations, all the stuff that goes with it, except that there's no such thing as raw data. Every bit of data has some sort of history or condition or preloaded view or what's the word I'm looking for? Preconditions with it. Something will come with it. It's very rarely raw. Therefore, you accept that. So one of the guiding principles for data ethics, for example, that I think it was one of the big consultancy firms came up with, was accepting one of your guiding principles that data is never raw. It always brings with it background. Therefore, what is that background? Is it good? Is it bad? Could be both. I agree with that. AI grifter plus dev team equals bias. Yeah, I agree with that. You'll also remember you're applying this technology to legacy systems. And this is what I joke about all the time. So whenever we do a Teams webinar and it's playing up, I always tell the joke, we're all worried about AI when Teams doesn't even work. When we had that big Microsoft outage the other day, we're all running around losing our heads over AI when actually a lot of organizations haven't even got the basics of Microsoft right, or the basics of data management right. So trying to apply a very clever algorithm that's dependent on some really good quality data, again, as mentioned before, rubbish in, rubbish out, really, it's never going to work. Not going to happen, because we're just so far away from our stuff being clean and being usable that of course we're going to get rubbish in. It's going to tell us stuff, certainly. I could apply a clever algorithm to some of my stuff and it will certainly tell me things. Are those things accurate, useful, insightful? Do they benefit society in any way? Probably not, no. But will the algorithm tell me something? Yeah, sure. But it's told me is what rubbish I've got. So I see a lot of these clever, oh, your data, your this algorithm can tell you this on your data set. But if you've done nothing to manage your data sets until now, you've got various different versions of poor Mrs. Jones across 10 different systems, and you even classes Mrs. Jones's name in different ways. How on earth are you going to get fascinating insights into Mrs. Jones unless that very clever algorithm is able to translate and anticipate all of those, which then means you've got to join all the systems up into one big massive algorithmic database. And we all know the issues that presents. So we've got issues with applying this to legacy tech systems. You've got issues with record keeping around and governance around how the algorithm itself has been developed. Because one of the things in the AI Act is about them generating records for you guys as governance professionals to be able to say, this is how the algorithm was developed. And a lot of them don't know that. A lot of them are actually using a bit of, or an algorithm that was developed by someone else. So when it comes to then telling you how it was developed, they don't know. They've got no idea what the data was, the test data was that was used to build that model, because they're using the output of the model, not the actual development of the model itself. So the AI Act is going to help with that, but not a lot. So one of the things we're hoping is in the UK's Act is a requirement to make it easier for you guys. So when you ask questions around what is this algorithm doing, where has it come from? If I'm going to use it, for example, to assist in medical diagnosis on diabetes, what data set did you use? Is it up to date? Because if you use a data set from 20 years ago, appropriate on today's medical understanding. And if the answer is no, well, then your algorithm is very clever. It's been took £20 million to develop, but it's of no use to you whatsoever because it's based on outdated, old medical information. So understanding how the algorithm has been developed is quite important. But there's lots of examples where you ask a question and you don't get an answer. You might also not get an answer because a lot of that is covered by copyright. So if you ask your average company, say for example, you go to Microsoft, ask them how their algorithm is working, they will say that is covered by copyright and will not tell you. So you're stuck. I need to know how the algorithm works in order to be able to trust it. I need to be able to edit it as well, because there are issues with data controllership if you hand over control to others. But I can't. I've got a provider that's saying for commercial reasons, I can't give you the exact algorithm. I'm stuck. So this is where you might have to, as public authority, bend a little bit. So, for example, well, the client I was working with, we had to sign NDAs. Me, the IT person, data person, and the company secretary had to sign a specific NDAs to allow us to get hold of the algorithm and bind us to confidentiality so that they felt comfortable that their commercial confidentiality wasn't going to be compromised. Most councils or most public authorities I know won't do that. If you're not willing to do that, they won't budge with you. So you might have to find that you might have to bend a little bit and be a bit more flexible a little bit with some of your traditional stances. Otherwise, you're not going to get the answers that you want. Whereas the moment I've signed that NDA, I can get hold of what I need. Am I going to go blabbering about it to the world and its sister? No. So does signing the NDA bother me in any way? No. Does it then means I get the answers that I need? Yes. Fine. The world's a better place. But I know a lot of public authorities don't like doing that. But you might need to change your position on that if you've got a provider or set of providers that just won't give you the information you need because they're concerned around intellectual property and copyright. So bear that in mind. One of the issues that also cropping up quite a lot is people are claiming to know a lot about AI when they know naff all. Now, I'm not an expert on AI. I've learnt the hard way by reading a lot of books and getting involved in some projects, but I'm not an expert and I will never be one. There's some aspects of cybersecurity with AI that baffle me completely. And Olu, one of the guys at now who's a bit more expert in it, he understands it like the back of his hand. I do not. There are things he tells me that just go in one ear and it gets lost completely. I know my limitations, but you will have staff and IT especially that will say they know about it when they don't, because they don't want to be seen to be behind the times. So one of the things you might have to challenge with, or what you will challenge with, is how are you going to educate and upskill people while still respecting their unwillingness to acknowledge that they don't actually know what this is or how it works. You've also got legacy laws not built for this. FOI, that's also one of the reasons why some companies are a little bit hesitant getting to give you some of their copyright and intellectual property stuff, because they know you're FOIable. Therefore, we have to, just as like we do with normal contracts, really narrow down what is commercially sensitive, get it clearly documented and outlined, and put certain things in place so that it is genuinely commercially exempt from things like FOI, EIR, etc. One of the things we've also started to see, and both the ICO has talked about this and others, is that it is starting to undermine, or people are starting to use it for social engineering. So if you think about your traditional methods of validating someone, either over the phone or via email or multi-factor authentication or whatever, people are using AI tools to bypass some of those. There was a really good program the other day. What was it on? It was on Channel 4, where they were talking about how people were using it to imitate voice. And there's one particular app, for example, that you just say a couple of words and it will start talking like you. So if you're going on voice validation for people, we're starting to see more and more people using AI to get around that. So straight away, we've got some problems with some of our traditional security controls. It's presenting some issues with. And the cybersecurity industry have already said that they're starting to see AI being used for cyber attacks, and they can't keep up. AI will come up, or a clever algorithm will come up with a clever virus or whatever. We're always one step behind cyber hackers because they find ways around behind it. But now there are ways of them finding ways around that. So your cybersecurity team are going to struggle to catch up. So they need to be on the ball and aware of some of this as well. Now, I've said to you before, or mentioned before, a lot of your controls for AI might currently be worded around personal data, and they should stay. But a lot of AI uses that will affect frontline services don't actually go anywhere near it. Therefore, you might want to make sure that a lot of your controls ask questions wider than just personal data. Are you doing anything that would use for example, a system to either predict something or analyze something, or words that are more plain English, so that staff go, oh, actually, yeah, this system is organizing my rotas for me, or organizing my diary, or analyzing something for me. If it's doing any of those things, it's likely to be an algorithm. I want to know about it, especially if it's going to be something that's affecting frontline services that might go near personal data, and therefore require me to make sure it's been handled in accordance with the principles, the rights, the accountability obligations, manage DPAA, got to manage controllers, all that other good stuff. But make sure your governance controls are a bit more loosely worded than just personal data. Otherwise, you'll miss it massively. The ICO has started producing some things. So there is some AI specific guidance on the ICO's website. They do also give you some good stuff around transparency in AI. Because if you don't understand the algorithm and how it's working, how on earth are you meant to explain it to these subjects or to the public? So there's some good examples in there around different things that you can consider, and they're worth having a look at. There's also the toolkit, which isn't quite as detailed as the accountability framework, but nonetheless is a good starting point. So if you've not had a look at it yet, well worth having a look at, and well worth having or using it as a start of a conversation with your wider AI working group, or whatever word you want to call them. As you probably would have seen in the King's speech, there was no specific AI bill listed. However, there was a statement made by the King that they were going to introduce controls on the development of certain technologies like AI. Therefore, it's expected that there will be, at some point over the next Parliament, a AI type bill. What everyone's predicting is that they're going to consult on it. So rather than just introduce a bill, they're actually going to go, well, what does this need to look like? What does it need to cover? How does it need to work? We've got a template from the EU. Do we want to go down that path? Do we want to go down a different path? What do we want to do? So it'll be more of a consultative process. That's probably why a bill wasn't announced. And that's probably why everyone's speculating they're going to consult first, then introduce a bill. But something is coming, very much so. As we've also seen, there is no specific data protection reform bill. However, there are a couple of bits that were mentioned and a couple of bills that have referenced where there will indeed be some tweaks to things like research, smart data, reforming the ICO and turning it into a commission, but with new powers rather than stripping them back, all that other good stuff. And as you might not have seen, or if you hopefully you have seen, we've also now got a minister dedicated to data protection and telecommunications, Chris Brown. And if you've ever looked at any of the work of Chris Brown, he's really good. He does pay attention. He did put input into the DP and DI bill and criticised a lot of what was the power grabbing stuff before. So fingers crossed, we might get some proactive, practical, useful changes to the Data Protection Act, as well as an AI type act that should be useful. But we'll see. All bets are off. It's a brand new world with a brand new government, so who knows where we're going to go. As you've all seen, EU AI Act is out, and I quite like this. If you've not looked at it because you've thought it doesn't apply to us, go and have a look at it. Because its approach to categorizing AI by its level of risk, I think your policy should do the same. So rather than outright banning it, actually saying there are some things that your board, your senior leadership team are going to say no to straight away. No, absolutely not. Can't do that either legally or morally, not going to do it. And then there are other things where it's a case of if you want to do some of these things, you go and speak to IG or your working group, whatever. If you're going to do these things, put these things in place and off you go. That sort of risk-based approach is worth it. Definitely. I like that approach. While it's got its problems, and it's not a perfect piece of law, there are issues with it, there are some criticisms with it. I prefer that sort of risk-based approach. It gives staff something to play with rather than out and out and outright no. There are further laws coming, a lot of them in draft. So India have been looking at things, the UAE have been looking at things, America, Canada, Australia, blah, blah, blah. So slowly but surely we should start to see more acts starting to appear. But for the minute, the EU is leading the way, like it does on quite a few things. I've mentioned on our previous sessions looking at this, the AI Standards Hub. If you've not signed up to it, do so. There is a wealth of free resources in there. They also do training, events. You've got a library. You can contribute to the forum. There is public and private sector, tons of good stuff in there. So if you've not signed up to it, not got access to some of the freebies, do so, because there's loads of good things in there. And in terms of like your own reading, really good stuff in there to help you out. There's also a load of stuff from the IAP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals. They've got an AI section. That's got some good stuff in it, especially from a data protection and privacy point of view. NADPO are mentioning it on quite a few of their events. You've obviously got the IRMS and what they're doing. They've got the AI stuff that's going on, as well as some of the stuff that's going on with Microsoft 365. That's worth keeping an eye on. You've also got Socratim, who produced a load of templates for your IT department. So, for example, there's a template policy in there to give to IT about their use of AI generative models, because a lot of staff in IT might want to use AI-based systems to build databases and systems. In fact, I know a lot of IT people that do. This policy kind of, as a template, sets out what staff need to do and what you need to put in place to do that if you want to do it. So again, your IT department could use that as a starting point. Say, look, do we want to ban this, or do we actually want to go into this with our eyes open and say, yeah, we want to use it, but this is how we use it with common sense, rather than just going off and doing it. So things we recommend you do. Agree a strategy and framework, because it's not just for us, include everyone. Representatives from frontline services, your data people, your technology people, you. This cannot just be an IG thing, because it is much wider than us. Therefore, if you've currently got an AI working group and it's just the usual suspects, so you, the DPO, the CSIRO, the Caldecott Guardian, and that's it, it's too narrow. You need to bring IT along with you on this. You need to bring representatives from frontline staff with you along with you on this. So bring them in. Offer them something, tea and cake, a bribe, whatever. Bring them in, because this needs to be a organisation-wide strategy and an organisation-wide policy. Otherwise, it's just going to be us shouting into the wind again. And this is just going to be another bit of technology that staff run off and play with, which is why it's a good idea to raise awareness. Get the message out there. Look, AI is a thing. It's out there. Lots of tools that use AI as a badge. There's lots of salespeople that are using it as a sales strategy. This is what staff need to be aware of. This is where you can get support. Take the bull by the horns and proactively grab it. This is our opportunity as IG to, rather than being the Department of No, which unfairly we do get accused of, this is our opportunity to go, look, we can do this. We can improve our data. We can do all of these things, but we've got to do it in the right way. So let's grab it and do it in the right way. Oh, yes, I forgot about the BCS. I'm part of their AI group. How can I forget that? They've got some really good stuff. They produce like a little newsletter on AI every 2 months, I think it is. They get a little update on it. But they have like networking events and whatever else through the British Computer Society. Good one. Thank you for reminding me about that. I forgot about that one. They only emailed me the other day. Why did I forget that? They're a good one. Recommend. Remember that it's more than just personal data. So us as information professionals are going to have to widen our scope to more than just personal data, because AI needs to be a joined up approach. So it's got to be all of it, not just personal data. And because this is a fast changing environment, I would also recommend signing up to the AI Standards Hub, coming along to events like this, so that you can keep an eye on changes that are coming, because there's constant changes, constant interpretations of the law, constant new products and all that other good stuff. So what I say today, for example, in a week could be completely useless because something else has come out and now there's a whole new thing. So constantly really be on the lookout for different things and monitor for key changes. Otherwise, you could very quickly find that you're working on advice that's very old and doesn't quite apply anymore. Sales plug, because I am here with an Act Now hat on, so sales plug. We've got our AI and machine learning basics course that's aimed for you guys, IGs and our records managers and DPOs. We've got a one-day course that goes through the basics and builds on these points we've gone through today. What we've also got is a briefing on the AI Act. So if you do want to get more involved in that, you've got that. And what we've also done is update some of the other courses to include references to AI. So the data ethics course, controllers and processors, how to do a DPIA, stuff for your CSIRO on the CSIRO's course, all that other good stuff. Also take a look at our IG apprenticeship program that we're doing with Damon Training. And if you fancy a challenge as a DPO, you can go for the intermediate certificate in GDPR practice, or if you fancy a real big challenge, you can go for the advanced certificate in GDPR practice that is very much based on case studies rather than academic learning. Right. If you haven't signed up to the ActNow Training blog, do so, actnowtraining.blog or actnow.org.uk, for any developments on the law, government, new technologies, issues will all be on there. So if you've not subscribed as a news source, I highly recommend. And that's an AI discussion in under an hour. Now, obviously, we haven't covered off everything, and I've posed a lot of questions to you with not necessarily any answers, because those answers will have to be, some of them will be developed by you, some of them will require a lot of discussion. But nonetheless, take some of those questions and work on them, either by your own training, your own reading, or for your own internal groups, as well as getting advice and support from external sources as well. Any questions?
I'm not sure that we've got time for questions. Scott, would you be happy for people to contact you offline after the event?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, fine by me.
because I can see that people are disappearing off to their next meeting. So it just forced me to say a huge thank you to Scott for sharing his time and expertise with us. As a group, we are very reliant on the generosity of our speakers. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to Scott. And as I said, the recording and slides where appropriate will be available after the session, but potentially not immediately. So if you want to know when they're ready, please do contact me. So apart from that, it just gives me great pleasure to say I hope you all have a lovely afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you at the next PSG event, which will be in September.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me.